Good morning, everybody. As you join the session, thank you for taking time out on this Tuesday morning to join us for the session this morning. We should have a chat box, so if you can see Lauren, Rowan and I, and you can hear me, just let us know in the chat box. Perhaps tell us what the weather's like where you are, just to get things moving while we just give everybody a chance to settle into the session. I shall just get my screen ready for us to go. And stuff's coming in chat box, so that's always a reassuring start that people can hear us. So we will get underway. We will have more people joining us, I have no doubt, as we work through the session. So good morning. This is our App Advisory Plus App of the Month webinar for April. We're delighted to have Karbon as our App of the Month for this month. That's almost over. April's gone really quickly. So for those who don't know me, my name is Will Farnell. I'm founder of Farnell Clarke and one of the co-founders at App Advisory Plus. Today, we are talking about getting the most out of your firm's data and how to track performance and measure future growth. We are due to wrap up for about 11:15 today. We love questions, so pop any questions in the Q&A box and I'll pick those up as we work through the session today. Quick introductions. I've introduced myself. I'm delighted to have both Rowan and Lauren with us today. Good morning, both of you. Rowan, do you want to just give a quick introduction to who you are?
Yeah, morning, Will. Morning, everyone. My name's Rowan. I'm a Senior Success Manager at Karbon. Before I joined Karbon, my background is working in practice, as well as actually with Will at App Advisory Plus. So I've worked on your side of the fence as a consultant and now in the software industry instead. So yeah, pleased to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rowan. And Lauren, lovely to see you after a few years absence. But do you want to give a quick introduction for anyone that doesn't know you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Will. So I'm Lauren Harvey. I'm the founder and co-director now of Full Stop. We've been around now for 11 and a half-ish years, similar to some of the others like yourselves, Will. Just hopefully coming out the other end of actually putting cloud and advisory into practice and delivering it for more people.
Brilliant, and really looking forward to your insights today, Lauren. I know you always have plenty of really interesting, useful stuff to say, so looking forward to that. So what are we going to talk about? We've done some welcomes and intros. Broadly, this is the topic. These webinars, if you've been on them before, it's not about product sell, it's about just kind of sharing thought leadership, ideas, suggestions on how you can do things better in your firm. But some of the things we're going to cover, we're going to talk about why do firms challenge in measuring their own operations and performance. We're great at helping our clients, helping them understand what's going on in their business, talking to them about KPIs, how to grow revenue and profitability and work more efficiently and more effectively. Yet so often we don't do it for ourselves. So we're going to talk about some of the challenges, and hopefully by talking about the challenges, it's going to create some opportunities for us to think about what we can do to overcome those challenges. We're going to talk a lot about data because, again, if we think about what we do for our clients, we use their data to feed back and present how they're doing and what they can do to improve. So we're going to talk about how we collect our data, how we manage our data within our own firms. We're going to talk about key metrics, KPIs, and this is kind of an open question, really, because we talk about KPIs, we talk about having metrics to measure what we do, but what should we be tracking? Why should we be tracking it? And is there kind of a definitive list? So we're going to kind of explore that between the three of us, and I'm sure there'll be some differing views and stuff around that, but it'll be interesting to see what we all have to say. And then finally, we've talked about the challenges, we've talked about data, we've talked about what we should be tracking. How do we make it happen? How do we get our teams on board to help us do this? And how do we actually make sure that we make use of the data that's available to us, because tracking for tracking's sake doesn't help anybody. And we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, so get those questions in the Q&A box as we go through. and I'll either pick them up as we go through the session, or we'll spend some time on them at the end. So to kick us off, Rowan, do you want to just give a quick introduction to Karbon for people that perhaps haven't seen it, haven't come across you yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone that's not aware, Karbon is a collaborative practice management platform. We aim to combine various different things that you do, so work, tracking, tasks, time, budgets, billing, communications, all in one place, together with automation, analytics, so that we're really trying to provide a centralized hub that you can go to get insight into really how you're doing with each different client engagement that you have and the client overall. We've also recently released a tool called Karbon Practice Intelligence, and this is really on the basis that of all the challenges that we're going to talk through of firms getting access to data. So we have lots of data that gets tracked in Karbon and also elsewhere in your practice. And the aim of Karbon Practice Intelligence is to model that in an easy, digestible way, so that you can get insights that maybe cost a lot of money to get previously. They're now available cheaper and easier within one tool. So overall, the vision, if you go to the next slide, and just to finish us up on this, the vision for Practice Intelligence is to combine all of those different data sources and give you a meaningful representation of what you want to understand about your practice. Various different measurements that are included in that, and at the moment we're modeling that in Power BI workbooks, some of which we might have a look at later in the session.
Okay. Thank you, Owen. So let's think about the challenges first, because you've created the tools. You've got the tools here to help firms take their data, turn it into meaningful information. If we go back to what we should be doing for our clients, it's taking their raw accounting data, turning it into useful insight so we can help them think about how to run a better business. Kind of seems easy, and we've been talking about it as accountants and bookkeepers for years. So why are we not doing it for ourselves? What are the challenges or what are the things that are stopping us, besides the obvious that we're too busy focusing on the client and therefore we don't have the time to think about our own businesses? I mean, Lauren, do you want to throw in some thoughts first of all? You've gone through this process of building your own management measurement systems. What stops firms doing it?
I think depending on the day of the week, Will, people will say different reasons of how confident they are in that day. I mean, so the first thing that's easy to say is, oh, it's in too many disparate areas, spreadsheets, email, all the rest of it. I mean, Karbon, in what they're doing there, are trying to get rid of that as an option, but I think a lot of people will still say that. I think, we've joked about this before. Actually, people don't want to see what it shows, so actually any excuse to not looking at it is a positive as well, because then what you don't know, you don't have to action, do you? And I think another one that we've touched on, which I think is kind of true, but relates to the others, is it's a bit like a busman's holiday. So you've been doing this all day or week or month with your team, with your clients, trying to find ways to make that, in this age of advisory, have more people do it, but then actually, oh, now I've got to go and do it for myself. So it comes back to processes and systems, having it in a place that's easily digestible. Now, the Power BI is great for that, because it's that dashboard that you could have on the screen in the office. I'm sure we're going to get onto this in a minute, Rowan, but it's actually having Karbon or your practice management repository set up to get that going. I think what we're personally finding, and I'll throw it back over to you two right now, is being really what we tell our clients to do, like use this one system, get it all in there. I think we as accountants have to get better at doing that, so that we've got that repository to then go and use reliably, and not say, oh, well, I don't trust that because there's also this information over in a spreadsheet. I think we have to take some of our own medicine.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we were talking beforehand, and it's like, think about the number of different data sets. So even today, we've got practice management data, we've got compliance data, we've got billing data in Xero, we've got
client data,
Yeah.
like, linking, we're all about trying to link clients with the team, with everything. And
Yeah.
that's really important if we, when you get onto NPS and stuff like that.
Yeah, and on the NPS point, to kind of qualify your point about we don't want to know the data. Before we first did NPS, I put it off about 4 years. I kind of knew I needed to do it. I knew I wanted to do it, but I was just too scared. So I don't want to know. I don't want to know how bad we are. But actually, when we first did it, we got a really good score. I then thought, well, wouldn't it have been nice to have kind of gone out and got the data 4 years ago, so I could look at it and say, wow, we went from there to here. Isn't that amazing? But we didn't have that baseline. We didn't have anything to start from. We just knew that we'd got to where we were and it was worse before. But actually quantifying that stuff is really valuable. So fear is always one of these kind of things that stops us doing things, and it is an element of bury head in the sand and everything else. So we're going to talk about data a lot. Data's a big problem, but equally I think it's part of this is we've got to understand where we're going as well, haven't we? It's like, what is it we're trying to achieve? And so much of the time when I work with firms is that step one's like, well, where do you want to be in 12 months time, in 3 years time? What do you want your revenue to be? What do you want your GP margin to be? What do you want to be delivering? And again, until we've got that absolute clarity of what we're trying to achieve, there's no point measuring, because we don't really know what it is we're measuring. But again, we're really good at doing that stuff for clients, in terms of saying to clients, well, how much money do you want to earn, and how big do you want your business to be, and what else is important to you? So I think we've got the data, but actually the start point is, well, what is it we want to do as a firm?
Yeah.
Rowan, any comments on either the bits Lauren said or that point about kind of knowing where you're going, or data?
Yeah, well, the data has always been hard to actually turn into those meaningful insights, which I think is one of the reasons why people haven't done it so far. But now that that's available, you have to have that mindset of, okay, so we've got this information, what do we actually want out of it to start with? So what do we want to track? And then it's like, if you take that NPS point, like previously having that NPS, you'd have had that probably siloed, right? So just it was NPS for each client. But now what you can actually get is, okay, we've got this NPS score. Why is that client maybe giving us that NPS score? And maybe previously you've just gone to your client manager and said, okay, why is this happened? And they'd have told you. But now you've got this picture that can be formed with all the data, but maybe you missed the deadline before, or you're off track for this client with various different things. So it's getting that full picture that you can get now.
Yeah, I just to lead on from Rowan's point there, which I think is super interesting. I think in the past, and I think this is still the same with clients when you're trying to advise them, if it's just, I don't know, an 8 out of 10 score, oh, well done, pat on the back. But what actually is actionable about that? I use the word Karbon because Karbon is our practice management tool, and hence why I'm here. But so, feel free to use your word in there. But for us, Karbon qualifies that data. So that 8 out of 10, Karbon qualifies it for us. So, okay, well, why did they give an 8 and they gave a 4? Oh, well, there's got to be some merit in the fact that we've got 52 emails back and forward with them versus 10 with somebody else, trying to bring those sort of highlights out, which I think was the point you're trying to get to, right, Rowan? I think that's the beauty of these data repositories that even sit on Karbon now, like Power BI, and tapping those all together.
But it's got to go beyond this, hasn't it? There's got to be we've got the systems to help us do this, but there's got to be a mindset in terms of, well, I want to do this.
Oh yeah, 100%. That was your point, Will. Sorry, which you said before, is why first. And I think also when we've spoken about this, we've been well, hence this definitive list of KPIs. What should I be tracking? Back to your point, Will, depends what you're going after in the next 12 months, really. I mean, the obvious is NPS and gross profit, right?
Yeah.
But all those other things, if there's issues in those two areas, what are you going to do to bring about change? And those sub KPIs that you could almost call that then,
Yes.
What's really important in the short term.
Yeah, and I think that the mindset thing is really critical in terms of we've got to stop thinking like accounting practices and start thinking like accounting businesses, and actually think about what we do as a business. So it comes back to that point. We can collect data all day long, and I use time recording as a prime example of this. A number of firms that collect data because it's what they've always done and never actually look at the data. So I'm not pro or anti particularly. All it is a case of, if you're going to collect the data, use it, because otherwise you're wasting money collecting the data. So I've said a few times that an average practice of 10 people probably spends £27,000 a year collecting time data. So what are you going to get for that £27,000 investment into collecting that data if you don't do anything with it? So it's kind of making sure that, as well as thinking about how we collect the data, being really clear on kind of, well, what are we going to do with it and how are we going to use it and what's it going to deliver for us. And again, it comes back to everyone's really busy and time becomes a barrier. And we're talking this. If anybody listening has got any other suggestions in terms of the challenges, what stops you measuring your operations and performance, pop it in the chat and we can kind of just share that in case we've missed anything.
One of the things there, Will, just picking up on that point is, I'm a big believer in like making things available to everyone. So like if you do this, make it open to the rest of your team as well, so that they understand what you're actually trying to aim for. Particularly at Karbon, like everyone is aware of all of our financial information, all of the metrics are just available to anyone, and we all know then what the goal is. So it helps to like get everyone on board with it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about kind of some of the making it happen at the end, but that's exactly that point, isn't it? That if you've got an objective, if there's something you're trying to deliver, then transparency and making sure everyone's aware of how you're performing against those objectives is absolutely critical, because it's no point having the best kept secret strategy in the world that your team don't know what it is you're trying to achieve and therefore can't deliver it. So we've talked a bit about challenges. I mean, before we move on, anything else there in terms of specifically around measuring our operations and performance that we've missed, that we need to pick up on, that stops firms doing this, besides time, mindset, multiple data? What else do we need to think about? Is there anything else?
I think if you hit on most, I think if you hit and start with those points that we've said, or even check in that you're still making sure that they're relevant, that is the best place to keep checking in that it's still serving the right purpose. Yeah.
And I mean, the next bullet point, we've talked about data already, but we've said it's all about data. So Rowan, this is obviously your bag. How do we get the real value out of all of the data we have? How do we need to approach managing this kind of minefield of data that we hold?
Yeah, obviously to start with, you have to have a good basis for the data. So, otherwise it's sort of garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
So one of the big things for me, particularly for the operational data that Karbon provides, is to build that into your daily management processes, so that you're always using Karbon to report on things, and in doing that you're encouraging people to actually do the actions that they need to do in Karbon, like mark off tasks as they're going through a job, or update their time records as they're completing work. If you manage those things on a daily basis, then you'll end up with good data for the insights.
I think sorry, Will, I think it starts a step back from that, having been through that over the last couple of years, though, Rowan, is making sure that those work templates are set up correctly for you internally to start off with. If there's too many or not enough, then things don't get ticked off. So, I mean, we've spent a long time customizing those to make sure that the data is then applicable to the team to update to get to that point that you just mentioned. And also, I think don't beat yourself up on that. It's an iterative step. Get the template out there. Don't think that it has to be perfect. Get it working, see what is the rub, and then it makes it easier. It's about moving that friction to get people to update the stuff as they go.
Yeah, and I heard you mention worksheets there, Lauren, and this is a Karbon thing here, isn't it, that we're talking about in terms of when you refer to worksheets, and if I'm not mistaken, this is an example. Is that right, Rowan?
This is an example, yeah. So this specifically is looking at email data. So the workbook gives you insight into, how many emails have been sent over a period of time, received, what your average response time is for just emails normally, and then client emails, and you can compare different people in here as well and different clients. So I think this was one that, Lauren, you said that you really like out of the workbooks that we've developed.
For two reasons. Obviously, there's that age-old word of scope creep. Your client team, your client managers are really busy delivering this stuff and making sure, basically, as a profession, we really care. So actually just asking your client managers, oh, is anything gone? Is anything too much? Quite often they don't realize what is too much, but things like this on this screen, that box, that number 3 box, tells you how many emails are being sent and vice versa. Is that verging into scope creep? Is it something? So this is the workbook. This is the Power BI view, Will. But what I was also mentioning was the work template, if you like. So that's the steps for whatever. Okay. Yep. To do a payroll this month, you need to do this, and this, and you need to tick them off as you go. And actually, is that not working well enough? Then you can dig in here and go, is that why loads of emails are getting sent? Because actually, we could avoid that if we just put those steps in properly in the first place. So that's why and Rowan's picked this sheet in particular. I think it's great at making sure that email isn't seen as a black hole.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I'm looking at this, it's the questions at the bottom, and obviously this is why we should be collecting this data, why we should be looking at it, to ask these questions. I mean, which customers are we slow to get back to and need to focus on? It's all about kind of identifying those opportunities to increase client experience and all of this other kind of stuff. And it's so important that if we want to kind of manage what we do, then we have to measure to be able to really focus on what can we do to improve client experience, what can we do to increase our efficiency and therefore our profitability, and that's kind of the drive. And while I've got these slides up, do you want to just touch on this one as well, and while we've got the slides on the screen?
So this is another one of our available pre-modeled workbooks. This one looks specifically at work that repeats. And so let's give an example of tax returns. You start with about 700-800 in April. What do you need to achieve to actually complete all of those by 31st of January or whenever your internal deadline is? So this is giving you a burn down of, I need to complete this many per day. This client manager needs to complete this many. This is where they're all at for each person. So it gives you that overview of, is someone struggling? Are you going to meet the deadline that you need to meet? Are you behind or ahead of where you were at this point last year?
So we use it for all those reasons again that Rowan's just brought up. The other thing is the absolute, not all, never say all, is it? But I'd say 99.9% of our work is repeating. And as I said, we've worked really heavily on our process improvement over the last couple of years. What we also use this workbook for is to see, has that paid off? That repeating work from last year, that tax return, this year with the improvements that we've made, has it improved those matrix of how long it took to complete, response times, all those things. So it is that barometer of improving the experience and the timing of it.
Yeah, perfect. Rowan, question for you here. Somebody's asked, is this the business intelligence view that we're looking at here, or is John explain that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is the one of the screens that you would get through your carbon practice intelligence. So there's 7 different workbooks available, and they all do different things. So like measure work status, repeating work, budgets, time, email, and yeah, you can get different views, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and perfect. A question for you here, Lauren, as well. Again, Richie's asked, he met with Carbon Advisor this week, who advised to start using My Week and consider starting to track time. Team structure, 9 people, all in Carbon. Be interested to hear whether Lauren is using My Week and or tracking time using a time tracking tool in Carbon.
Yeah, so yes, we do use My Week. I personally still use the work view. So when we're having team meetings and that type of thing, I still like to track the work view, but that's making sure everything's on schedule, and then coming into here with the BI view really is against those matrix and sharing how we are against objectives with the team. So yeah, team meetings I use Workview, but the team individually all use My Week to manage their workload.
Yeah,
and record their time in Carbon against those work items as well.
Perfect. And Richie, you hear it here first. After about 10 years of not recording time in our business, we started recording time in February, and it's about looking at what we're doing and really getting a much deeper view of our efficiency predominantly.
Yeah. And also the same for us, Will. I'm also, yeah, my thought on it is we might also do it for different periods each year rather than it being a continuous 12-month process. So I'm sort of floating the idea whether we'll do it for a quarter, gather some data, do stuff with it, and then so the jury's still out on that of how we're going to keep doing it. But at the moment, yes, we're doing it. And it's more around some of those things we were just talking about bottlenecks, process improvement, scope creep, and also checking in overall for the customer data to make sure our pricing and what we last based our pricing review on is still holding true with what we're now doing and improvements.
Yeah, perfect. So let's talk about KPIs and metrics, because wherever you look, people saying you should be tracking KPIs, should be doing this. We're all accountancy practices, we're all bookkeeping practices, whatever we are. So in theory, we should all be interested in the same KPIs. But what we said earlier is, well, it kind of depends on what your objectives are, and Lauren kind of alluded to our position. For me, what's important is if we track NPS and we have good NPS, we track gross profit, so we understand individual teams' contribution to the business, and we track our monthly recurring revenue, then if they're working, nothing else really matters, because we're satisfying clients, we're delivering the revenue growth we need, and the teams are working at a level and our pricing is right to deliver the GP contribution that we think is important. So therefore, we don't need 30 KPIs, because if we track those 3 and we're on track, then hey, we're doing what we need to do. Is that too simplistic?
I think it's the great point, is the high level. It's, yeah, if those are what you've set out for them to be at the beginning of the year, then fantastic. But there's 2 points there. If they're not, what are you going to do about it? That's when you need the sub KPIs. And also, as an industry, we can't stand still. So although you've set that at whatever you've set those at, is that enough? Is that going to be enough in a year? What should you be working towards? There's that whole thing about not focusing too much on the future and living in the present. But as businesses, we have to set up at a time of increasing change. So that would be the, I completely agree with those being the bedrock, if you like, the foundation, but it's what you do with it to add on to that, if they're not right, or they need to be better, or should they be better, as well as planning for the future. And, you know, and going back to those boards that we were sharing, and I keep going on about it, but we've been working on efficiency and process improvement. That's where we've added extras on in terms of the response times, the number of emails. I mean, that's, for the want of a better word, those sub KPIs to make sure they're backing those up. Yeah.
And I think that's it, because you're absolutely right. And Andrew's put a point in here as well and said, don't you need cascading KPIs, say 3 at key at leadership level, but then different KPIs at pod team office level, which is right, because actually I was on purposely oversimplifying it there. If we talk about NPS, and you've got to understand what are the things that are going to drive NPS and what do we need to measure, and response time's the prime example of that. Is if we're not responding, then your NPS is going to be rubbish. So our response times, how filing accounts within number of months of year end and everything else. So clearly there's more beneath it. And I mean, can you give a flavour of your approach, Lauren, in your firm? What's important for you in terms of what you're tracking?
For us, it's that. For the want of using that word now, if that's cascading down so we a year end, we talk to clients throughout the year. So one of our internal ones is having a year end done within 8 weeks. As an example, so what we've done at the moment is use those boards, those basic boards that Rowan's talked about. We're creating our full stop version off the back of that, which will have the NPS, the gross profit, but we'll also have our year-end response time. And at the moment, that's what we're working on at the moment. The board, I already know, will be different for 23, 24, once we've got to the level, 95% of being completed within 8 weeks, and the NPS still being high, then there's still checking in on that next year, but maybe not so much on that main board. That may be me behind the scenes and getting the team to have a new focus. Yeah.
Rowan, I'll come to you in a second. Just a couple of other questions coming. Penny said, really KPIs, if we're looking at overall figures, how do we pick up some members of the team maybe carrying others, similarly scope creep and things? I mean, the simple response to that is that we track all of our metrics at pod level. So we track GP metrics, we track NPS, all at individual pod level. So we can do that within a team of 4. And then the client managers, in theory, within those pods are able to kind of have a view on who's performing and so on. So
similar for us here at the moment, we our clients are now assigned to a client manager. So it's not to call them out, it's to help them and find out, they know those best. Is there scope creep going on? Is there business change that hasn't come up in another way that we need to change their agreement with us? And also, is there something that somebody in another client manager, or in your case pod, is doing really well, that best practice that's got missing in the processes that needs to be incorporated better?
Absolutely. So Rowan, Karbon have written loads of great content around KPIs and key metrics and things like that. What's your take here? And obviously from your time in practice as well, data was a big thing for you when you were in practice. What's your take here in terms of what should we be doing around KPIs and measuring metrics in our firms?
I think it's really what Andrew said. You have to have those top level things, which you're both measuring as well, but then break those down into things that people can control and influence. So giving people ownership of that, so that and reward people based on those things as well, so that they've got an incentive to actually make sure that you're getting to that NPS score that you want and provided those customer service levels. So it's about kind of everyone will need to track, are jobs getting completed within a time period, but then you need to decide as a firm, what is that time period for you to create that NPS score that you need for those clients that you serve. So it'll be different for everyone, but the baseline of information, data for the actual job completion will be the same.
Yeah, and so I mean, almost what we're saying here is that there may be a standard stack of KPIs that we should be thinking about, but actually the target within those KPIs are going to be different based on what you're trying to achieve as a firm.
Back to your point, Will, about us being accountancy businesses, that's our IP now. What's important, that's why a client signs up to you. Also, if you're bringing all these apps and all these services together to do X service, it's checking in that you're delivering on that through these KPIs. If you're saying we'll speak to you, we'll give you an update, we'll give you a tax update every month, then and that's what they've signed up, as part of your service, and that's your IP. Make sure that you're delivering on that. And what's differentiating you from somebody else? Yeah.
And that's getting much harder, isn't it? It's like we're all using the same tech and everything else. So what do we do that
so it literally comes down to service delivery and making sure you're exceeding on that at the moment.
So then making sure you deliver what you say you're going to deliver, which is where it's about creating your own KPIs, creating the measures you need to validate the things you say in your marketing material.
100%. Yeah,
perfect. Right. So we've talked about challenges, we've talked about data, we've talked about KPIs and metrics. How do we make it happen? So where do firms start if they're listening to this and saying, actually, completely get this, we're not doing it, I've got 5 data sets, where do we start? Rowan, kick that off.
I think you have to start with this is to understand this is not an easy thing to do, and so tackle the things that are most problematic for you right now first, because you're not going to get everything done at once. So pick that thing that or 1 or 2 things that are really causing a problem, and start to put in place measures that you want to, like targets to track for your reporting, and introduce those, but then also follow the data all the way through to how it comes into that report, and make sure that the management procedures that you've got ensure that data gets input correctly in the first place.
Lauren, anything to add to that?
Just to back that up, but I just from when it was same with clients, right? They come to you, you show them a shiny report and go, this is where we're going to get to. Won't that be great? It's not underestimating, as Rowan said, the work that it takes internally to get your data into a state where then that dashboard of just 3 or 5 key numbers is really valuable, and you don't have people going, but that's wrong. You don't want to get to that point and people not then follow through and use it. So that point of getting to the carbon, don't expect perfection in day one in terms of so start small and iterate with that, but really make sure that your processes and you're on board with things being ticked off, like Rowan said earlier, because they are valuable, not having stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there, removing the friction, removing the barriers, so that you can get to having a valuable dashboard. Even start with 1 on there is better, because it shows that you're making progress in terms of using that dashboard. So for us, it's really making sure that your practice management system is used. And if people send you a spreadsheet or send you another thing, going, lovely, but we need this in the one system, and being really almost like the broken record, like we would be with clients.
I think it's getting team engagement, getting a team on board is so critical. And we're going through this process at the moment. We're building dashboards and things internally at the moment, and we're engaging with a team and asking them, what do you want to know? Because that's sometimes so easily overlooked, isn't it? We think about at leadership team level, what do we want to track? But what do our team need in terms of them being able to work out whether they've got the right resource, whether they're delivering the right SLAs and everything else. So get your team involved in the process. Sorry, Rowan, you were going to say.
Yeah, just on the back of exactly what you've said there, I think it's also important to build in performance measures for the team, rewards that are based on what you want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody's got any questions, get these questions in. We've got another product specific one for you, Rowan. How well does Karbon integrate with Outlook? How is it capturing emails? Karbon email is a big part of Karbon. Lauren will have some views on this as well, but do you want to kick off on that, Rowan?
Yeah, we've got a complete integration with Outlook and Gmail and Exchange, such that all of your emails effectively are managed through Karbon. So you send replies, you receive your emails in Karbon, and those then get tracked against pieces of work that you're dealing with or clients. We also have plans to expand the functionality of that into kind of team inboxes in the coming months as well.
Lauren.
On that point, before we even used processes in Karbon, the original sales point to us was that it did such a good job with email, in bringing all the team's emails into one spot, seeing them against clients, seeing what was sent if suddenly somebody is off, not having to, we don't send internal email or messages, it all goes through Karbon to keep all that data and client juice, if you like, in one place. So yeah, the email, we're Gmail, but same thing applies. It's just, that was before we even touched processes, and never mind BI. Email is definitely the place to start with Karbon, in my opinion, or it was when we did it.
Yeah, and a feature, if we said to someone, we're going to take away a feature, and what would make you the most angry, it would be that one.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a bit. I say it with Xero. The selling point for Xero for me was automatic bank rec, and the selling point for Karbon was the email triage. Those are the two. Don't get rid of them.
It's always, I've always seen it as quite a divisive one, isn't it? Because people come at it and they'll look at that and say, well, I love Outlook and I don't want to let go of kind of using my Outlook interface. You obviously still, I'm sure, must get that kind of question challenge, Rowan. I mean, a couple of things. Firstly, is there options for people that are adamant they're not going to drop Outlook? And secondly, how long does it take people to realize that actually this is way better than using Outlook?
Yeah, there is that option, but we don't encourage it for the reasons that Lauren's already said, because Karbon is much less powerful if you don't have that information in there. So the whole point is to bring the work and the communication in together in one place.
Yeah. And the second part of that question is, when people reluctantly change, how long does it take them to realize that actually they don't know what they were concerned about?
Yeah, usually after a couple of weeks, people are on board with it. It's quite an intuitive tool to use, as you'd hope it would be. So yeah, it doesn't take too long, but it is a big change and a mindset change mainly. Yeah.
Again, it comes back to mindset, doesn't it? It's like making sure that we think about our businesses as businesses and something that we want to grow and scale profitably. We are almost at the end. We've still got time for questions. So if anybody's got any questions, pop them in. But whilst you think about doing that, I'll start to kind of wrap this up with some key takeaways. We always like to finish these sessions with, look, if you take nothing else away, these are the really key points for you. So it goes without saying that this starts and ends with good data. So think about the data you've got available to you, think about the duplication, think about what you can do to start minimizing that duplication of data and get everything into one place, so you've got one source of truth. Build the KPIs that support and underpin your firm vision and objectives. So don't just go out and pick up the top 20 KPIs for an accounting firm. Think about what you're trying to achieve in your business and build your KPIs to help you achieve the things that are important to you. Thirdly, build discipline into making the most of the data you have. The point I made about timesheets, if you're collecting time data and you're not looking at it and investigating it and analyzing it on a monthly basis at least, then don't bother collecting it, because you might as well save the money. You can't manage what you don't measure. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. If you want to manage improvement, if you want to improve the way your business operates and performs, you've got to manage the way you do that, and you can only do that if you're measuring and you're clear on what it is you're measuring. And the final one is look, Rowan said this is a big task. So start small, prioritize the insights and metrics that you want, and build from there. Even if it's one metric that you want to measure, and add another one the following month. You don't have to do this overnight. Rowan, Lauren, any comments on those? Well, I know we touched on them before we started, but anything else to add or expand on?
No, I think just make sure that your data, that your practice management, your carbon is got as much data in as possible. Know what you want to track, which I think, as you said, Will, we've touched on a few times. And don't beat yourself up. What you achieve in one area on that one point, take the time savings or the increased gross profit and then apply it to something else.
Yeah. Rowan, anything else to add from you on these?
Yeah, I think I'd just reiterate on what Lauren said earlier in the process, where you've got to start somewhere, and sometimes that involves taking a jump into things that you don't necessarily want to see, but actually getting the visibility of that to start with will hopefully encourage you to start putting in place some of the things that are on here. Yeah,
perfect. Excellent. So we are almost there. A couple of things. Firstly, we have our App Advisory Plus Theatre at Accountex. We are running a slightly adapted version of this in our theatre on day one. So Rowan is joining us for that session. So if you want to spend a bit more time looking at this in a bit more detail, and throw some questions at the panel we have there, do come along and join us for that session. We do have an offer from Karbon here. So if you book a demo, mention App Advisory Plus, and you will get a credit towards onboarding training and support if you choose to go ahead with Karbon. We will send out a recording of this session together with some resources and things that you may find useful. Rowan, I'm sure, is very happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure Lauren will be as well, if you want some first-hand insight of somebody using Karbon. So all there is to say now is a huge thank you to Rowan and Lauren for taking time out. Thank you to all of you for joining us for the session. Hope it's been useful. Feel free to watch the recording back. Apologies, we're 2 minutes over, but Lauren, Rowan, thanks so much indeed for your input today. Really helpful. I hope everybody's found it informative, and we will see you for our App of the Month session next month in May, and at Accountex in a few weeks' time. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.